Ever wondered why cottage cheese looks the way it does? Those soft, lumpy curds swimming in a creamy pool. Why does it taste so light, yet is so rich in protein? And here's an even better question. How did this oddly satisfying cheese come to be one of the oldest yet most underappreciated foods in the world? Welcome to the fascinating curdy journey of cottage cheese, a simple food with a not-so-simple story. Today we're diving into how it's made, both the way your great-grandmother might have done it on a wooden stove and the way it's produced today in massive dairy plants with the help of stainless steel vats and finely tuned bacteria. But this isn't just a food tutorial. It's a journey through centuries of kitchen alchemy, science, and human ingenuity. Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll know not only how cottage cheese is made, but why its very existence tells a story of transformation of milk turning to curd, of farmhouse survival becoming factory precision, and of something forgotten becoming a modern health food hero. But let's not jump ahead. To truly understand this humble cheese, we need to start with a question most people never think to ask. Where did cottage cheese come from? And why was it even invented in the first place? Let's rewind the clock, way before supermarkets and industrial machines, to a time when people didn't even know they were inventing cheese. Picture this: warm milk stored in a container made from an animal's stomach. Weird, right? But what happened next was pure food magic. Enzymes in the lining of the stomach, which we now know as rennet, began to act on the milk. A few hours later, surprise, the milk had split into curds and whey. This wasn't a mistake. It was the accidental discovery of cheese, and cottage cheese may have been one of the earliest forms. Now fast forward to 19th century Europe and early America, when the word cottage cheese finally stuck. People living in rural cottages would let their skimmed milk sour naturally near the fireplace. No fridges, no additives, just time, warmth, and a bit of bacterial magic. They drained the curds from the whey and voila, a fresh, tangy cheese was born. Not fancy, not aged, but nourishing and simple. A cheese for the everyday person. But wait, how does that rustic kitchen magic translate into a product that can sit on a refrigerated shelf for weeks? That's our next question, and it brings us to the clean, stainless steel world of industrial cottage cheese production. Inside a dairy plant, the process begins not with warm fireside milk, but with precision-engineered skim milk, pasteurized to kill harmful bacteria and standardize its starting point. Why skim milk? Because factories want control over fat, texture, and taste. They'll add the cream back later in just the right amount. Once pasteurized, the milk is poured into enormous cheese vats, some holding thousands of gallons. It's then gently warmed to about 30 to 32 degrees Celsius, the perfect temperature to wake up the bacterial starter culture. These microscopic workers begin eating the milk sugar, lactose, and slowly start to acidify the milk. This is the moment the milk starts changing at a molecular level. The casein proteins, once floating peacefully, begin to link up and form the structure of curds. But the magic doesn't stop there. In many factories, a touch of rennet, yes, the same enzyme from that ancient cheese-inventing stomach, is added to help the curds set more firmly. Within a few hours, what was once liquid milk is now a soft, jiggling mass. If you sliced into it, you'd see it's like cutting into silken tofu, solid enough to hold a knife line, but fragile. That brings us to the next critical moment: cutting the curds. Giant wire knives slice the gelled milk into uniform cubes. And here's a secret: the size of these cubes can determine the final texture. Small cubes give small curds, large cubes give chunky ones. Want that signature cottage cheese bounce? This is where it starts. Next comes the cooking stage, but not the kind that involves bubbling pots. In cheesemaking, cooking means slowly heating the curds to help them shrink and firm up, while gently stirring to keep them from clumping. The curd particles tighten up, releasing whey. You'll see them get bouncier, almost like tiny marshmallows of protein. After cooking, the whey is drained, but the curds still aren't done. They go through a series of cold water washes, which might seem odd. Why rinse your cheese? Cold water stops fermentation, cools the curds quickly, and rinses out excess acid. This is why cottage cheese has a mild, slightly tangy taste instead of a sour punch. Finally, the factory adds a cream dressing carefully measured to hit just the right fat content, and salt to enhance the flavor. The curds and cream are gently mixed, then scooped into tubs, sealed and chilled. And just like that, a cheese that started with bacteria and heat is now a supermarket staple. But now we've hit a new question. What happens if you don't have massive machines or cultured starters? What if you're just someone at home with a pot, some milk, and curiosity? Well, that brings us to the homemade transformation. A different process, but no less magical, and possibly even tastier. At home, you don't need precision vats or lab-grown cultures. You need milk, heat, patience, and perhaps a splash of vinegar or lemon juice. That's right. While factories rely on carefully cultured bacteria, the average kitchen can shortcut the process by using direct acidification. Let's break it down. You heat the milk, whole milk if you like it creamy, skim milk if you want it lean, until it's warm but not boiling. Then you add your acid of choice. Instantly, like a magic trick, the milk splits. The curds separate from the whey right before your eyes. Stir gently and you'll see the lumpy white cheese forming, the signature look of cottage cheese. Now, this quick method skips the fermentation stage, so it lacks the gentle tang of bacteria-made curds. But it's fast and satisfying, and with a bit of salt and a drizzle of cream, it's a rich, customizable snack you made yourself. The more traditional home method using a starter culture or buttermilk and rennet takes longer, but gets you closer to the factory flavor. You let the milk sit undisturbed as the bacteria work their slow magic. Over hours, the milk quietly transforms. Then you cut the curds, cook them low and slow, rinse them gently, and dress them in cream. Sounds familiar? Well, that's because it is. The techniques might differ in tools, but the essence is the same. Industrial or homemade, the cottage cheese story is one of transformation from liquid to solid, bland to flavorful, chaos to curd. So, what's the bigger picture here? When you combine the historical roots, the factory science, and the kitchen hacks, you realize that cottage cheese isn't just a food. It's a symbol of how we learned to manipulate nature to preserve nutrition. We took milk, something that spoils quickly, and turned it into a fresh cheese with texture, shelf life, and a place on every breakfast table, diet plan, and vintage salad bar. Whether made by villagers centuries ago or churned out by gleaming machines today, cottage cheese has always been about simple ingredients and careful steps. It's humble, it's honest, and once you understand how it's made, it tastes even better. But there's one more layer to uncover. Cottage cheese begins with curdled milk and drained whey. But what happens when you don't drain the whey? Or when you press the curds? Or when you age the cheese for months in a cave? That's the doorway to a whole world of cheeses, from ricotta to cheddar, parmesan to blue. Curious? Join us and stretch that curiosity even further. The next deep dive might just surprise you even more. Here at Dairy Decoded, we don't just melt cheese, we melt minds with delicious stories from the world of dairy, farming, and food culture. Your support helps us to keep exploring and uncovering the hidden side of what we eat. So don't be shy, hit that subscribe button and age like a fine cheese. Thank you for watching.